Quick warning, due to the subject of this film, there will be discussions of domestic violence. If you're someone who can't handle that, then I'd advise you to skip this video because heavy topics will be addressed in this rewrite. This is going to be a first for me. Normally I rewrite family adventure stories, but never horror thrillers, so this will be an experience. The first Sinister movie caught my attention and I've watched it multiple times. Ethan Hawke is an outstanding actor and he carries the film in my opinion. When the second film was announced, I was looking forward to it, but by the time I watched it, it was very underwhelming. It had a very interesting story of an abused wife hiding with her twin sons from her abusive husband, only to find that she's been put in another violent cycle. There were little things here and there that unfortunately dragged the film down, but I personally think that the acting was the biggest issue. Like this video suggests, I'm going to attempt to fix some of those issues, so let's go ahead and get started. Former officer Robert Cargill makes his clumsy confession and the priest advises him to the best of his abilities. Before Robert ends his confession, he rhetorically asks, if it was possible to prevent such a heinous act, would it be worth breaking the law? The priest gives him a firm look and replies, one's conviction must be stronger than the weight of the sin. He thanks the priest for his time and returns home, going to work on his daunting task. At a supermarket, Courtney Collins does her grocery shopping while trying to stay under budget. However, she can't help but feel that she's being watched. In the cereal aisle, she can't decide on the cereal she wants to get, but again she feels eyes on her. Courtney quickly turns her head and spots a man with his phone pointed at her. Leaving her groceries, she quickly makes her way out of the store while trying to evade her stalker. Once in her car, she watches him as he scours the parking lot. Courtney patiently watches him make a phone call, but then he finally leaves. She gives out a sigh of relief and makes her way back home. There's a couple reasons why I changed the opening. First off, I did not like the introduction of Dylan. I thought that was unnecessary because I felt that there were plenty of other opportunities in the film that introduced Dylan as a protagonist. I did like how they introduced Robert in the second film, showing how the events in the first film affected him deeply and how he's at his breaking point and chooses to seek advice from a higher power. This scene is coming off as if he's contemplating on whether or not he should pursue this personal mission of his on ending Bagul's violent cycle. The downside is that there wasn't any real mention of this in his confession and I wanted some type of hint that this was going to be his goal throughout the film. I don't know if what I wrote would be something that a priest would actually say or not. I am aware that a priest would never condone breaking the law, but might subtly if it means preventing the horrific death of an innocent family. I wanted to go ahead and end Robert's scene by having him start making his calls, showing that despite the consequences, he's made his decision. And I did this so I could focus on one scene at a time and its characters and not have to worry about going back and forth all the time. By doing this, that gave me the room I wanted to extend Courtney's introduction. The reason I have her alone in the supermarket is because this poor woman is on the run from her abusive husband and obviously having her twin sons with her would identify her faster. In the film, she has a warning system for her children, showing that she is aware that her abusive husband still poses a threat. I can understand that she would want to keep her children close because, to her, that's the only way that she can assure their safety. I also wanted to show her intelligence by not driving away until she can confirm that the man doesn't know which car is hers and that she won't be followed. Arriving home, she gives out a whistle and waits a moment. She casually gives out another whistle, but again no response. Now panicking, she rushes inside and calls out two names. As she turns the corner, she's greeted by her two sons. She holds them tight but quickly scolds them for not whistling back. She asks them what they were doing and they somberly answer that they were watching a movie. Unbeknownst to the family, Robert is watching from a distance and is mortified to see the house being occupied. He leaves to contemplate what to do next. That night, Zach wakes Dylan, urging him to get out of bed, but Dylan refuses. Zach insists that they won't let either of them sleep until they get up. The boys make their way to the basement and watch one of the home videos. Dylan looks away, but Milo forces him to watch. Zach snaps at him, telling him not to touch his brother. The film ends and the brothers return to bed. In the film, Courtney has a warning system that is used only one time, but I too wanted some kind of system myself that would feel more natural to use throughout the rewrite. Thus, the whistle. Because let's face it, whistling is a terrifying tool in a horror setting. It can be used to show how relaxed and comfortable the antagonist is and to deceive the protagonist. The real reason I changed the introduction of the children was because I wanted to hint that it's starting and not blatantly show like in the film. This next part is what really compelled me to do this rewrite, and that is that I wanted to change how the children are manipulated. In the film, we the audience is made to believe that Dylan is a chosen child, and by the end of it, spoiler, it's a bait and switch. The ghost children was just pretending that it was Dylan to get Zach jealous, which would make him more compliant to be the chosen one. It's not a bad concept, but the execution was really poor. I feel that it would have hit harder if we didn't know which one it was going to be until it literally happens. In the first film, we learn that it's the youngest child that is targeted, which lets the audience know which child to focus on. But in the sequel, because they're twins, it's a golden opportunity to have it be a non-stop guessing game. That's what I was going for in this rewrite, and the reason I changed Zach so drastically is because he was an unlikable little throughout this entire film, and by the end, I personally didn't feel sorry for what happened to him. And that should never be the case because despite his horrible behavior, he was still a child. Robert returns to the house, but before he makes it to the door, one of the boys spots him and calls out to their mother. A misunderstanding ensues, but once it's straightened out, Robert asks Courtney if she knows the history behind the church. She casually answers that she is aware, and while she's not pleased to have her boys living near a place like that, they don't have anywhere else to go. However, the boys don't go near the church, so it doesn't bother her as bad as it used to. With it getting late, Robert leaves for the day. That night, Dylan has a nightmare and wakes his brother. The two of them make their way to the basement and watch another film since they're told that they won't have any more bad dreams if they watch all the films. When it's over, Dylan asks Zach if he has nightmares. "They're not the same as yours," he answers. Robert returns and investigates the church, but it's interrupted when Courtney's husband arrives. Dylan immediately runs into the house and Zach watches through the window. Robert manages to defuse the situation. Zach tells Dylan that it's over and that they're safe for now. Robert spends the night and the boys watch another video, but when it's over, Dylan is scared to be alone. They sleep in the same room, but Dylan can't sleep. He's scared their father will come back. Zach comforts him, promising that he won't let their father hurt him. More or less, this was just a small recap since I didn't feel much needed to be changed. It was slightly odd that Courtney knew what happened in the church and wasn't at all uncomfortable having her children live near or go in there. I get that she has bigger things to worry about, but I just wanted to address it real quick. The only real significant change I made was Zach and Dylan. More than anything, I wanted to make it clear how close the twins are and try to make it harder to decipher which one it's going to be. I want to address something real quick. The scene where Courtney gets slightly drunk with Robert, I don't appreciate. This is a battered woman that damn nearly had the rug pulled out from under her, and I can understand her nerves being shot and needing something to take the edge off, but for her to get drunk, even slightly, feels out of character. Her husband Clint clearly believes that he's above the law since he bribed police officers to break the law. This shows how unpredictable this man can be, and now he knows where she lives. So I would think that she would be even more on guard now. For me, this scene feels out of character for any woman that would be in this situation. Personally, I wouldn't care what Robert said. If it was me, I would pack up my kids and get the fuck out of there. Robert leaves to meet Dr. Stombeg and learns more than he ever wanted to know. Back at the farm, Courtney finds the chair she was restoring ruined. She calls to her sons and demands to know which one it was. They both deny it was them. She tries to be patient with them, but money is tight and tensions are high. "I get that what happened yesterday was stressful, but you can't take your anger out on a chair?" "Why not? It doesn't fight back, but neither did you." "Excuse me?" "It's true. You never once fought back. What I did or didn't do was to keep you boys safe, but it wasn't enough. Nothing you do will ever be enough." Courtney orders the boys to go to their rooms. When they're gone, the tears fall as their words overwhelm her with guilt. I wanted to replace this whole scene because it all felt unnatural, and that could be partly due to the bad acting and the script itself. In my rewrite, I wanted to start showing the changes within the children, showing that watching the films night after night is wearing them down because that's what possession is. And unironically, that's what an abusive relationship is too, wearing down your partner. The change is not noticeable until you're forced to look it in the eye, and that's what's happening in this scene. Courtney is so busy trying to provide for her children and protect them from their father that she doesn't notice them changing, or perhaps it's that she doesn't want to notice because she's already got so much on her plate, and acknowledging that there is a negative change in her children would obviously have her contemplating if perhaps she failed them as their mother. However, this is just as much of a stressful situation on her kids, if not more, and that's without the supernatural aspect of it. But because there is, it just intensifies the emotions. When I wrote this, I didn't want it to be so black and white like in the film. I wanted both sides to be relatable. That night, Dylan doesn't want to watch another film. He feels bad about what he said to their mother, and Zach too feels guilty, but Milo tells him that they were only telling the truth. They watch Milo's film, and it's too much for Dylan. The other children laugh at him, but quickly stop. The boys stare into the darkness, and their eyes go wide as their nightmare appears before them. The boys run for their lives, but get separated when they hide in the church. The next morning, they wake, still in their hiding spots. Dylan urges Zach that they need to tell their mother and Robert what's been happening, insisting that they can help. Zach bites his lip, hesitating, but eventually nods in agreement. Milo appears. We're not watching any more videos, and we're telling our mom. Go ahead, as if she'll believe you anyway. What do you mean? Adults refuse to believe anything that will make their lives harder. Not our mom. You sure about that? Milo disappears, and as the boys are making their way back into the house, their father returns. Courtney comes out and is served. Defeated, she whistles for her boys and finds them hiding under the bed. They're both upset and try to tell her that something very bad is happening, but it's all too much for her, and she snaps at them. I know that none of us wants this, but it can't be helped. But things will be different this time. That's what he always said, when you come home from the hospital. Courtney knows there's nothing she can say that will make the situation any better and just instructs them to pack. Milo appears and with a smug grin said, "Told you so." In the film, Milo pins Zach and Dylan against each other, but because the twins are so close in the rewrite, a different method has to be used. One of the main reasons I wrote this was because Milo continuously threatens the boys not to tell, but that didn't really make sense to me. In horror films, when the protagonist is a child, their main obstacle is not so much the creature that is coming after them, but trying to get their parents to believe them so they can help them, which unfortunately never works until it's too late. When the boys say that they're going to tell, I wanted Milo to almost encourage it in a teasing manner, so that way when they actually do tell and Courtney doesn't want to hear it, it reinforces Milo and has the children second guessing if they can count on their only parent, their only protector, which would obviously be devastating to the children and may cause an unrepairable rift. Side note, the reason that I have one of the twins sucking their thumbs is because when children and even adults are experiencing extremely stressful situations and while trying to relieve that anxiety can lead to thumb sucking in order to comfort themselves. And that's what I was trying to convey with this image. That the whole situation with their father and Bagul is stressing them out so badly that it's causing them to regress. All is silent as the family is brought back to Clint's house. He eagerly tells the boys to change as they're going to celebrate by having a picnic. The mood is spoiled as Courtney's phone goes off. He demands the phone. Courtney reluctantly gives it to him. He glances at the number and asks who Robert is. Courtney says nothing and he smacks her. Dylan and Zach hold hands as they helplessly watch. Courtney glances at the boys and complies, if only to spare them from having to see anything else. He snaps at the boys to go change and instructs Courtney not to ruin their family's do-over. I added this particularly to show that they can't even make it to the front door without this insecure bastard losing his and just stating how delusional he is by thinking that they're going to be a happy family and go on a picnic. I also want to show how the twins are heavily leaning on each other at this point, making it almost damn nearly impossible to figure out which one it's going to be. As the family is having their picnic, it's being preserved in film. Robert arrives at the farmhouse and finds no one there. Distraught, he finds Dylan's slingshot with "Help Us" written on it. While upset at the turn of events, Robert finishes what he originally set out to do. He sets the house on fire, and now it was time for the church. He hesitantly goes in, gets to work, and as much as he doesn't want to, he makes his way to the back, not wanting any part of the church to survive. As he douses the back room, he hears something and finds that the front of the church is already burning. With the flames getting closer, he runs to the back, hoping to find a back exit. There is, but it's all boarded up. His only escape now is the boarded up windows. Robert desperately pulls and punches at the boards, not caring about the damage being done to his hands. The entire church is engulfed in flames and Robert struggles to compose himself after jumping out the window. The heat from the flames and the smoke in his lungs are horribly dulling his senses, but he knows they're there. He does his best to get to his vehicle and starts making his way to Courtney and the boys. Quick warning, there will be mention of unwanted physical contact, and if that's something you can't handle, I suggest skipping 10 seconds ahead. Here we go. In the film, poor Robert gets beaten up by Clint, and he admits that he's going to his wife out of spite, meaning a her because I doubt this woman wants any part of him. Robert just lets it happen. He goes back to his hotel room and essentially is going to let the family die. He does go back after Dylan begs him to help them. I'm almost positive that this man was going to sit in his hotel room and let the family be murdered if Dylan hadn't texted him. I erase that and just show that he is committed in seeing this through. I personally think it's necessary to show him burning the house and church. I don't know if the filmmakers forgot or if they just didn't have it in the budget. I also thought it'd be good to give him a small victory before tackling the mountain and also show that Bagul does see him as a threat as the church is set on fire with Robert still in it. The family is having their dinner, but no one is eating except for Clint. Frustrated, he shouts for them to eat. Courtney tries to encourage the boys to eat, but they won't, and Clint snaps at Courtney, accusing her of ruining their happy family. It's your fault. What the hell did you just say to me? We were never happy with you, and never will be. Clint furiously stands, which ushers Courtney to stand, preparing to run to her child's aid. But something is wrong. Clint is struggling to keep his balance as his vision blurs. He looks to Courtney and accuses her before passing out. Courtney makes her way to Clint, but only to confirm that he's no threat anymore. She tells the boys that they're leaving, but starts to feel dizzy herself. As she blacks out, she shakes her head in disbelief as she spots a dark figure at the end of the table. Dylan and Zach look at each other in silence, until Zach says, "At least he won't hurt you anymore." And he too passes out. You know that moment in films where the audience is holding their breath and crossing their fingers for it to turn out okay, only for shit to hit the fan? That's what I was going for. I wanted to give that disbelief of last hope for Courtney. If she believes that Clint passing out is her saving grace, then the audience will most likely believe it as well, or at least be in denial of what's about to happen next. I thought long and hard about what I wanted to do with the twins and decided that Dylan is the chosen one, and I will explain it all, but only after the end. When I first watched the dinner scene, I didn't think anything of it at first until I re-watched it. Courtney is eating far away from the rest of the family, and this was intentional because this is Clint's way of punishing her. He's isolating her from her children. When he picks on Dylan, she doesn't move to physically stop it, but just yell to snap Clint out of it. She knows that she's on thin ice with him, and if she wants back in his good graces so she can be near her children, so she can protect them, she can't do anything that would upset him, meaning physically interfering with him. That's my interpretation of this scene anyway. Dylan begins filming as Clint is first to burn. Robert hits him with the car, stunning him. He manages to cut Courtney and Zach loose. Courtney runs to Dylan, but he cuts her hand with a sickle and runs to retrieve the camera. Robert grabs Courtney and forces her in the car. With Zach in the back, he drives away. Courtney is distraught with what just happened, and her hand bleeding profusely isn't helping. Robert does his best to assist her with her hand while driving, but Bagul appears in front of the car. Robert swerves, flipping the vehicle. Robert manages to make his way out and checks on Courtney, who's unconscious. He then calls out to Zach, who's barely conscious. He asks him if he can crawl into the front and out the window like he did. Zach answers yes, and Robert gets to work freeing Courtney. However, Zach quickly screams that they have him. Robert can't see what he's talking about, but reluctantly abandons Courtney to assist Zach. Right as he reaches Zach, he feels himself being pushed away. Every time he gets up, he's immediately pushed back down and further away. A whistle can be heard. Robert desperately tries to make his way back to the vehicle as Dylan approaches from behind. With a few sparks from the lighter, it doesn't take long for the vehicle to be completely engulfed in flames. Robert tries to pull Zach out, who is screaming in pain. He knows he can't help Courtney, who too is screaming in pain, but he at least wants to save Zach, but the car explodes. Robert is covered in burns and the pain won't let him slip away. He watches from the corner of his eye as Dylan returns to the house. With what little strength he has left, Robert follows. Dylan is taken and Robert ends the cycle. With it finished, he returns to the hotel only to be horrified by what's waiting for him. Before I explain anything, if this ending isn't your cup of tea, then imagine the original ending, but Zach's motive is to keep his promise to his brother, even if that means killing him, but Robert intervenes and Zach dies satisfied that he still kept his promise. Now onto the exposition. Originally, I had planned to end the rewrite similar to the film because obviously we don't want the abused wife and child to die. and it did make sense that Dylan would go through with it. This is a boy that witnessed his mother being continuously abused by his father and eventually experienced it for himself. His mother did take him away but failed to protect him as they were forced to return to his father's home, and immediately it starts and his mother doesn't do anything to stop it. In his child eyes, both his parents have failed him, and his brother was an absolute dick to him throughout the film. As for the rewrite, same principles. His mother failed to keep his father away. His father has not changed at all as he witnessed him hit his mother. And as for his brother, it's only a matter of time that his promise is broken. Let's not forget to mention that this poor boy was beaten so badly that his mother had to take him to the hospital, and to my knowledge, that was the first time his father ever did that to him. It's understandable that he would be fearful for the second one that would eventually come, and ultimately decide that he doesn't want to wait around for that. Now let's talk about Zach. He acted like an absolute dick throughout this film, but why is that? We don't really get to know anything about how he views this situation, but what does seem apparent is that Zach doesn't seem as afraid of his father as Dylan. He does hint in the film that his father possibly could have hit him, but given how casual his demeanor is when he mentions it, could mean that it was rare or minor compared to Dylan and his mother. It's not uncommon for abusive parents to isolate one child to take the brunt of the abuse, and that could be the situation with the twins. From what we see, Zach is more obedient compared to Dylan. This could explain why Zach is so aggressive towards Dylan. If he received the less attention from his father, then it's safe to say that he had the better life in that house out of the three of them. So when Courtney took them away for Dylan's safety, in Zach's eyes, it's Dylan's fault that he was taken from his home. Add that aggression with the insecurities that the ghost children are instilling in him, this is a recipe for an unstable child. Not to mention that in the film, when Courtney is tucking Zach into bed, he tells her that Dylan is acting strange. I don't know if Zach had ulterior motives when telling Courtney this. I wouldn't put it past him if he was trying to get Dylan in trouble. Regardless, instead of assuring him that he doesn't need to worry, she instead puts pressure on him to keep an eye on his brother and doesn't even bother to ask how he's doing. Truthfully, there is no wrong answer when it comes to choosing which child would have more motive. Both are damaged due to the circumstances of their home and is ripe for picking. As much as I wanted Courtney and Zach to live in the rewrite, it just didn't feel right given the brutal nature of this supernatural antagonist that this film produced. It didn't feel genuine that they could escape Bagul that easily. It also didn't make sense that they didn't just get back in the fucking car. That's what annoyed the hell out of me more than anything. That was part of my motive on rewriting the ending. Despite the ending being a hell of a lot darker, I still wanted it to be suspenseful enough where the audience would be begging for a Hail Mary, but there isn't one. As for Robert, I spared him because obviously he needed to live for the ending of the film. I swear I don't hate the actor or the character, I just felt compelled to make it harder on him because he's the underdog of the story. When I first started doing these fixing videos, I knew that my comfort zone was going to be the family adventure tropish films, but I never thought that I would venture into the horror thriller category. What's even more surprising is that I already have another thriller in mind that I want to rewrite. Some of the subjects in the film are not easy to talk about, but it does feel empowering to speak about it. I'm aware that if I choose to dive into this rabbit hole, there will be even more sensitive subjects that I'll have to address in the rewrites. I doubt I'm ready for that, but I think Sinister was a good starting point. While the film didn't meet the audience's expectations, is it still worth a watch? That's for you to decide. Like always, thanks for watching and like and subscribe.